The moment my sister called me a nobody in front of 200 wedding guests, I knew she had finally made the mistake I had been waiting years for. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to embarrass her, but because, for the first time, she had said it loudly enough for the one person in the room who knew the truth about me to hear. And 3 minutes later, when the most powerful businessman in the ballroom walked toward our table and said, "Claire? What are you doing here? I thought you were in New York finalizing our acquisition." My sister's smile disappeared. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 36 years old when my younger sister Madison got married. To my family, I was the disappointment. Madison was the beautiful one, the successful one, the one who had everything figured out. She had a perfect apartment, a perfect fiancé, expensive clothes, and thousands of photographs showing everyone how perfect her life was. I had none of that. I lived alone in a quiet townhouse outside the city. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I rarely attended family gatherings. And I worked from home. That last part was what my family found most amusing. Whenever someone asked what I did, I simply said I worked in technology consulting. I never explained further. And because I never explained, my family had created their own version of my life. According to my mother, I spent my days answering emails for small companies. According to my sister, I was playing business from my spare bedroom. And according to Madison's fiancé, Daniel, I was simply someone who had never achieved anything worth talking about. They were all wrong, but I had never corrected them. For 5 years, I had been the anonymous founder and majority owner of a technology company that had grown from a small idea into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I had deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. No interviews, no magazine covers, no photographs beside the company logo. The public knew the company. They knew the CEO. They knew the investors. But almost nobody knew me. And my family certainly didn't. That was why, on the evening of Madison's wedding, I walked into the ballroom wearing a simple black dress and carrying a small gift. I had no idea that by midnight, my entire family would discover who I really was. And I had no idea that one of them had been stealing from me. The wedding reception was already in full swing when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers hung above the ballroom. A string quartet played near the dance floor. Waiters moved between tables carrying champagne, expensive appetizers, and desserts that looked too beautiful to eat. Madison had spent nearly a year planning the wedding, and she wanted everyone to know it. The moment I entered, she spotted me from across the room. Her eyes moved over my dress, then down to my shoes, then back to my face. She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile Madison always gave me when she had found something she could criticize. "Claire," she said, walking toward me, "you actually came." I looked at her white wedding dress and smiled politely. "Of course I came. You're my sister." She glanced behind me. "Alone?" I nodded. Madison's smile grew wider. "Of course." There were people standing nearby. My mother, my aunt, several of Madison's friends. They all heard her. I ignored the comment. "I brought you something." I handed her a small gift box. She barely looked at it. "Is this one of those handmade things?" "No." "Good." She passed the box to one of her bridesmaids without opening it. Then she leaned closer. "You know, Claire, I really thought you might bring someone tonight." I stared at her. "Someone? A date." "I didn't." Madison sighed dramatically. "You're 36. I said nothing. She looked around, making sure everyone was listening. Still single. Still living alone, still working from home. Her friend beside her laughed. I felt my mother's eyes on me. Madison lowered her voice, but not enough. At some point, you have to admit that maybe the problem isn't everyone else. The people around us became quiet. I could have responded. I could have told her that while she was criticizing my life, I had personally approved the acquisition of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I could have told her that the house she was standing in had been partially financed by a company I owned. I could have told her that her new husband's employer had been trying to arrange a meeting with me for almost 3 months. But I said nothing, because I had learned something a long time ago. People reveal much more when they think you're powerless. Madison looked satisfied. Then she turned to the people around her. "Honestly, I worry about her sometimes." My mother nodded. "Your sister has always struggled to find direction." I looked at my mother. She didn't even seem embarrassed. Madison laughed. Direction? Mom, she works in her pajamas. A few people laughed. Then Madison looked directly at me. You know what, Claire? You don't have to pretend anymore. I felt something tighten in my chest. Pretend what? She tilted her head. That you're doing well. The laughter stopped. Madison took a sip of champagne. You're a nobody, Claire. The words hung in the air. A few people looked away. My mother stared at the floor. But Madison wasn't finished. You're 36, single, living alone, and working some little job from home. You don't have a career. You don't have a family. You don't even have anything you're proud of. She smiled. You're just there. For a moment, the entire ballroom seemed to disappear. I looked at my sister, the same girl I had protected when we were children, the same girl whose college tuition I had secretly helped pay, the same girl whose first apartment I had helped secure, the same girl whose wedding I had spent weeks trying to make special. And now she was standing in front of 200 people, telling me I was nothing. I could have destroyed her in that moment, but I didn't. I simply picked up my glass of water and said, Congratulations, Madison. Her smile faltered. That's it. I looked at her. That's it. She seemed disappointed. She had wanted an argument. She wanted me to cry. She wanted everyone to believe she had won. So I gave her exactly what she expected. I walked away. I found my table near the back of the ballroom and sat down alone. For the next 20 minutes, I watched my sister dance with her new husband. Everyone smiled. Everyone applauded. Everyone believed they were watching the beginning of a perfect life. But I noticed something strange. Daniel wasn't smiling, not when Madison turned away, not when his father walked past, and especially not when a man in a dark suit entered the ballroom and immediately began looking around. I recognized that man. Everyone in the business world knew him, and when his eyes finally found me across the crowded ballroom, his expression changed. He stopped walking. Then he whispered something to the man beside him. The man looked at me, then back at him, and suddenly, the two of them began walking directly toward my table. I had not seen either of them in person for almost 6 months, and they were not supposed to know I was at the wedding. I stood up slowly. Across the ballroom, Madison noticed. Her eyes followed mine. Then she saw the men approaching. The color began to drain from her face, because the man walking toward me was Daniel's father, the CEO of the company my business had just acquired, and he was smiling like he had just found the most important person in the entire room. He reached my table. Then, in front of my mother, my sister, her new husband, and nearly 200 wedding guests, he looked directly at me and said, Claire Bennett? I nodded. He smiled. What are you doing here? Then he glanced at the crowd around us and said the one sentence that changed everything. I thought you were in New York finalizing our acquisition. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The music continued playing. People continued laughing near the dance floor. A waiter walked past carrying a tray of champagne. But at our table, everything had stopped. My sister Madison stared at me. Then she looked at the man standing in front of me. Then back at me. Claire? She repeated. I nodded. Yes. The CEO smiled. I didn't realize you were attending the wedding. I didn't realize you were the father of the groom, he laughed. Neither of us knew. Then he turned toward Daniel. Daniel, you never told me Claire was your sister-in-law. Daniel had gone completely pale. For the first time that evening, I saw genuine fear on his face. Not embarrassment. Not surprise. Fear. Madison noticed it too. She looked at him. You know her? Daniel swallowed. Of course I know her. His father frowned. Of course you know her? There was something strange about the way Daniel said it, like he was trying to choose every word carefully. The CEO looked back at me. Claire, I was hoping to speak with you before the board meeting tomorrow. The acquisition documents are nearly finalized. My mother slowly stood up. The acquisition? The CEO looked at her. Yes. My mother turned toward me. What acquisition? I didn't answer immediately. Madison was still staring at me. The same sister who, less than 30 minutes earlier, had called me a nobody. The same sister who had told 200 people that I had no career. Now she was looking at the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country as he spoke to me like I was his equal, or perhaps his superior. Because I was. The CEO's expression suddenly became serious. Claire, I hope you don't mind me asking, But are you still planning to attend the board meeting in New York tomorrow? I am, he nodded. Good, because this acquisition is extremely important to us. Madison's mouth opened slightly. Wait, everyone turned toward her. She looked at her father-in-law. What exactly does Claire have to do with your company? The CEO looked confused. Your sister is the founder of Bennett Technologies. Silence. I watched the words hit the room. My mother stared at me. My aunt covered her mouth. Madison didn't move. Then she laughed. It was a nervous laugh. No. The CEO frowned. I'm sorry? Madison shook her head. No, that's not possible. The CEO looked at me, then back at her. Why would it not be possible? Because Claire works from home, I almost smiled. The CEO looked genuinely confused. Yes. Madison pointed at me. She works in her spare bedroom. Yes. She doesn't even go into an office. The CEO's expression changed. He glanced at me. Then he said, Claire has never needed to. Madison stared at him. I could see her trying to make the pieces fit. For years, my family had believed that I worked alone from home because I had failed to build a real career. They had never understood that the company had more than 30 offices across the country. They had never understood that I worked from home because I preferred it. And they certainly didn't know that I had founded the company in my apartment with an old laptop and a borrowed desk. The CEO continued. Claire founded Bennett Technologies 7 years ago. My mother whispered, 7 years? I nodded. The CEO smiled. She built the company from nothing. Today, it's one of the fastest growing technology firms in the country. My aunt looked at me. But why have we never heard about this? I answered quietly. Because I never told you. Madison finally found her voice. You're the founder? Yes. She shook her head. No, you can't be. I looked at her. Why not? Because you never said anything. You never asked. Her face reddened. The CEO chuckled. Claire has always preferred to stay out of the spotlight. He was right. I had declined interviews. I had refused to appear on business magazine covers. I had even turned down an invitation to speak at a major technology conference. I had never wanted my family to know, not because I was ashamed, because I had learned something very early. The moment people know what you have, they stop seeing you. They see what they can get from you. And I had seen enough of that in my own family. The CEO suddenly turned to his son. Daniel, you really never told us Claire was your sister? Daniel looked at me. She never told us what she did. The CEO frowned. That isn't exactly true. Daniel's eyes narrowed. His father continued. We met her 3 years ago. I looked at Daniel. He had been standing silently beside Madison. I had met him before, several times, at family dinners, at holidays, at birthdays. He had always been polite, but distant. Too distant, I now realized. The CEO looked at me. Claire, I believe you met Daniel at our annual charity dinner. I did. Madison turned toward her husband. You knew? Daniel looked uncomfortable. I knew she worked in technology. That's not what I asked. He said nothing. Madison's face hardened. You knew my sister was the founder of Bennett Technologies? Daniel looked at his father, then at me. I knew she was involved with the company. That was not an answer. The CEO noticed it too. Daniel? His son sighed. I didn't know she was the founder. I watched him carefully. He was lying. I knew it immediately. Not because I had proof, because I had spent years negotiating with executives, investors, and people who lied for a living. Daniel was not telling the truth. But before I could say anything, the CEO's attention shifted. He reached into his jacket. Claire, there is one more thing I need to discuss with you. He pulled out his phone. His expression had changed. The smile was gone. Did you receive the financial report I sent you yesterday? Yes. And did you notice the irregularities? I nodded. Several. Madison looked between us. What irregularities? Nobody answered her. The CEO looked at me. I thought you said your internal audit team had identified the problem. They did. Do you know who is responsible? I looked across the ballroom, at my mother, at my aunt, at Madison, at Daniel. Then I looked back at the CEO. Not yet. Madison stared at me. What are you talking about? I picked up my glass. Nothing that concerns you. She laughed. Nothing that concerns me? I looked at her. You're right. Her expression tightened. The CEO looked uncomfortable. Claire, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Perhaps. I glanced toward the dance floor. The wedding music had stopped. People were beginning to look in our direction. They had heard enough to know something important was happening, and Madison could feel the attention shifting away from her. She had spent the entire evening being the center of the room. Now, everyone was watching me. She hated it. "Claire," she said quietly. I turned. "Yes?" "Can we talk?" I almost laughed. "Now?" Her eyes flicked toward the people watching us. "Please." I followed her several feet away from the table. The moment we were alone, her expression changed. The confident bride disappeared. "How much money do you have?" I stared at her. "You heard me." I shook my head. "That's your first question?" She crossed her arms. "You've been hiding this from us for years." "I haven't hidden anything." "You let us think you were a nobody." I looked at her. "I never told you I was a nobody." She had no answer. I continued. "You decided that yourself." Madison's eyes filled with anger. "Do you know how humiliating this is?" I stared at her. She had actually said that. "You humiliated me in front of 200 people. That was different." "How?" "Because I didn't know." I smiled slightly. "That's exactly the point." She looked away. Then her voice became softer. "Claire, we're family." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You didn't seem to remember that when you called me a nobody." She looked back at me. "I was joking." "No, you weren't." Her face changed, because she knew I was right. Then she stepped closer. "Listen to me. Whatever this company is worth, whatever money you have, I don't care." That was the first lie. I knew it, she knew it, and the person standing behind us knew it too. I turned. Daniel was standing several feet away, watching us. His face was pale. Madison noticed him. "What are you doing here?" Daniel didn't answer. He looked at me. "Claire." I said nothing. He walked closer. "I need to talk to you." Madison frowned. "About what?" Daniel looked at her. "Not here." "Why not?" He looked back at me, then lowered his voice. "Because there are things you need to know." My eyes narrowed. "About what?" Daniel glanced around the ballroom. Then he said, "About the company." The noise of the wedding seemed to disappear again. I stared at him. "What about it?" He took a breath. "Your internal audit isn't looking in the right place." I said nothing. Daniel looked directly at me. "Someone has been stealing from Bennett Technologies for years." Then he leaned closer and whispered, "And I think I know who." I stared at Daniel. For the first time since I had met him, he looked genuinely frightened. Not embarrassed. Not nervous. Frightened. "What do you mean you know who?" I asked. Daniel glanced toward the ballroom. "Not here." I folded my arms. "You came to me and said someone has been stealing from my company. You don't get to tell me where to ask questions." His jaw tightened. "I know. Then talk." He looked over my shoulder. Madison was standing several feet away, watching us. Daniel lowered his voice. "Someone has been transferring money through a series of consulting companies." I said nothing. "We found the first irregularity almost 2 years ago. Small amounts at first. 10,000 here. 20,000 there." My expression hardened. "Who found them?" "An outside auditor." "And why am I hearing about this now?" Daniel looked away. That answer told me more than his words. I stepped closer. "Daniel?" He swallowed. "The reports were buried." "By whom?" He looked at me. "Your chief financial officer." I felt a cold pressure settle in my chest. My CFO had worked with me for 6 years. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She had been one of the first people I hired. She had helped me build Bennett Technologies from a tiny startup into a national company. I trusted her, or at least I had. "Evelyn?" I asked. Daniel nodded. "That's what the evidence suggests." I stared at him. "What evidence?" He pulled out his phone. Before he could show me anything, Madison walked toward us. "What evidence?" Daniel immediately locked his screen. "Nothing." Madison looked at him. "Nothing." I said it was nothing. She looked from him to me. Then her expression changed. "You're talking about Claire's company." Daniel said nothing. Madison turned to me. "What is going on?" I looked at her. "Your husband was just telling me someone may have been stealing from my company." Her face went pale. For half a second. Then she recovered. "That's impossible." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because Daniel would know." I turned toward him. "Would you?" Daniel looked uncomfortable. Madison's voice became sharper. "Daniel works in finance. If someone was stealing millions of dollars, he would know." I watched him carefully. "Would you?" Daniel took a slow breath. "I knew there were irregularities." Madison stared at him. "You knew?" "Not everything." "What does that mean?" He looked at me. "I was investigating." I felt something click into place. Investigating for whom? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation was the first thing that truly concerned me. Daniel? He looked at me. For myself. I almost laughed. That's not an answer. He lowered his voice. I found something 3 months ago. What? He looked toward his father. The CEO was still speaking with several guests near the main table. Then Daniel said, payments from a company called Northbridge Consulting. I froze. I knew that name. Northbridge? He nodded. How much? Over the past 4 years? Yes. Daniel looked at me. Just under $6 million. The noise around us seemed to fade. $6 million. I had built Bennett Technologies carefully. Every major expense was tracked. Every acquisition was reviewed. Every payment above a certain threshold required multiple approvals. $6 million could not simply disappear, unless someone had designed the system to make it disappear. Who owns Northbridge? I asked. Daniel looked at me. That's the problem. What problem? The company is registered to a woman named Evelyn Carter. I didn't move. For a moment, I could not breathe. Daniel watched my face. You know her? Yes. She's your CFO. I looked across the ballroom. Evelyn wasn't there. She had never been invited to the wedding. But that wasn't the reason my stomach had tightened. The reason was something Daniel didn't know. 3 weeks earlier, I had personally reviewed a confidential financial report. There had been an unexplained discrepancy. Not $6 million, a much smaller amount. But it had led me to one name, Northbridge Consulting. I had asked Evelyn about it. She had told me it was a legitimate vendor. She had shown me documents, invoices, contracts, payment approvals. Everything appeared clean. Too clean. And now Daniel was telling me that Northbridge was registered to Evelyn herself. I looked at him. How did you find this? He hesitated. Because I was asked to review a transaction. By whom? My father. I glanced toward the CEO. Why? Because your company is acquiring ours. I nodded. That explains the audit. Daniel shook his head. No. I looked at him. What? The audit wasn't triggered by the acquisition. He leaned closer. It started before your company ever approached us. I stared at him. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Because someone stopped the investigation. Who? Daniel looked at me. I don't know. I watched him carefully. You've been investigating this for 3 months. Yes. And you don't know who stopped it? I know who had access. Who? He didn't answer. I waited. Finally, he said, your sister. The words hit me harder than I expected. I looked toward Madison. She was standing near the dance floor, surrounded by friends and relatives, laughing, smiling, pretending nothing was wrong. I turned back to Daniel. Madison had access to my company's financial records? No. Then what do you mean? Daniel lowered his voice. Madison worked for a consulting firm that had access to one of the subsidiaries. I frowned. She never told me that, because she didn't work there under her own name. I stared at him. What? Daniel pulled up a document on his phone. He turned the screen toward me. I looked at the name. My heart stopped. M. Bennett Consulting. The company was registered 2 years earlier. The listed owner was not Madison Bennett. It was a woman named Marissa Bennett, our mother's maiden name. I looked at Daniel. That's my mother's name. I know. I scrolled through the document. The company had received payments from Northbridge Consulting, then transferred money to another company, then another. A chain. A carefully designed chain. My hands went cold. Who signed the contracts? Daniel looked at me. Your sister. I stared at the screen. Under my mother's name? He nodded. I looked back toward Madison. She was still laughing, still celebrating, still surrounded by people who believed she was beginning the perfect life. But now I was seeing her differently. I remembered the questions she had asked me over the years. How much was the company worth? Who handled the finances? Did I still own most of it? Was I planning to sell? At the time, I had thought she was simply curious. Now, every question sounded different. Daniel said, Claire, there's more. I looked at him. Of course there is. He hesitated. The money wasn't the only thing being moved. What else? He looked directly at me. Confidential information. I said nothing. Your company's acquisition plans, internal financial projections, future product launches. I felt a chill move through me. Who received it? Daniel's face was grim. We don't know yet. Then what do you know? He took a breath. Someone was selling your company's information to competitors. I looked at Madison. She was still smiling, still unaware that the entire version of me she had created in her mind was about to collapse. I turned back to Daniel. How much information? Enough to damage the company. Did it? He nodded. Several times. My mind raced. A failed product launch. An acquisition that collapsed at the last minute. A competitor releasing a nearly identical product just weeks before our own announcement. At the time, I had blamed bad luck. I had blamed market timing. I had blamed mistakes. But now, all those events suddenly looked connected. Someone had been inside my company. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been stealing from me. And the person standing beside me was telling me that my own sister may have been part of it. I looked at Daniel. Why are you telling me this tonight? His expression changed. Because tomorrow's acquisition meeting is not what you think it is. I frowned. What does that mean? He glanced toward his father, then back at me. My father believes the acquisition is a business deal. And you don't. Daniel shook his head. No. Why? He stepped closer. Because someone inside your company has been trying to stop the acquisition. I stared at him. Who? He looked toward Madison. Then he whispered, the person who has been stealing from you may be the same person who tried to make sure your company never acquired ours. Before I could respond, my sister suddenly appeared beside us. Her face was pale, and in her hand was a phone. She looked directly at me. Claire, she said. I turned toward her. What? She swallowed, then said, we need to talk about Northbridge. I stared at Madison. Why? Her eyes moved toward Daniel, because he doesn't know everything. Daniel stiffened. What does that mean? Madison ignored him. She looked at me. I never stole from you. I didn't accuse you. But you were thinking it. I said nothing. She lowered her voice. I signed documents for Mom. That's all. Why? Madison looked away. Because she asked me to. My heart sank. Mom? She nodded. Then she whispered, Mom created Northbridge. I felt the room tilt. Why? Madison finally looked at me. Because she said you were hiding money from the family. I almost laughed. My money? She said you owed us. For what? Madison's eyes filled with tears. For everything. I stared at her. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my security director appeared on the screen. We found the original transfer files. I opened the attachment. There was a list of every payment made through Northbridge. At the bottom was a signature. Not Madison's. Not my mother's. It was Evelyn Carter's. But the final transaction had been made only 3 days earlier, and the recipient wasn't my mother. It wasn't Madison. It was Daniel's father. I slowly looked up. The CEO was standing across the ballroom, watching me. Then he walked toward us. His face was grim. Claire, he said. I held up my phone. Would you like to explain this? He looked at the screen and went completely silent. Then he whispered, you weren't supposed to find that until after the acquisition. The CEO stared at my phone. I stared at him. What does that mean? He didn't answer. So I turned toward the room. Everyone, please listen. The music stopped. Every face turned toward me. I held up the phone. $6 million was transferred through a company created using my mother's name. Confidential information was sold, and the final payment went to a company connected to the man standing in front of me. The CEO's face turned pale. That isn't what happened. Then explain it. He couldn't. I turned toward Evelyn, who had just entered the ballroom. She stopped when she saw me. Claire, I raised my hand. Don't. My mother began crying. Madison stood frozen. Then Evelyn finally whispered, I can explain. Go ahead. She looked at my mother, then at Madison, and everything became clear. My mother had created Northbridge. Madison had signed documents. Evelyn had moved the money. And the CEO had secretly paid them for confidential information to stop my company from acquiring his. But there was one thing they had all forgotten. I had founded Bennett Technologies, and I owned 72% of it. I looked at the CEO. The acquisition is canceled. His face collapsed. Then I looked at my family. And tomorrow morning, every document, every transfer, and every name goes to the authorities. My mother started crying. Madison stepped toward me. Claire, please. I looked at her. I'm a nobody, remember? She said nothing. I walked past her. But before I left, I stopped. You were right about one thing. Madison looked up. I smiled. I did keep my life private. Then I looked around at the family who had spent years underestimating me. But you were wrong about why. I walked out of the ballroom alone. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed my family's approval, because that night, they finally discovered the truth. I had never been a nobody. They had simply been too busy laughing at me to notice. And by the next morning, the entire family would learn something else. The woman they had humiliated at the wedding was now the person who could destroy everything they had built.